What does it mean to change someone's life? I'm here today with Mr. Roe Stamps, the man behind one of the most transformative scholarship programs in the country. As a stamp scholar myself, I have seen firsthand what his vision has made possible. This is Mr. Roe Stamps. So I'd love to start off hearing a bit about your background and your origin. You grew up in Georgia. I'd love to hear about what sort of values shaped you during those early years and what you still carry with you today.
Was small town American values that probably do stick with me. I kind of long for some of those days and some of those things. But I remember once I went back, my father was ill and I took my bicycle back. That's when I was racing bikes all over here. And,
Oh, wow.
and so I hopped on the bike and I zoomed around Macon. And you know, when I was a little kid, I thought Macon was a big place.
Yeah.
And now that I live in a bigger place, I see it a little differently. And I think that bicycle tour awakened me to the fact that some of those distances that I thought were great, relatively small.
And I know that you went to Georgia Tech. How did you end up there?
I don't think I had a choice. It was like a lot of people back then. You applied to one school, you went there, and so I was interested in math and science. I was pretty good at both, and so I applied to Georgia Tech and got in. I thought I might have had it figured out when I was at Georgia Tech, but I was wrong. I was still too immature, and a mediocre student with a lot of ability. I recommend more dedication, certainly more than I had. And I would say, you know, one of the things you have to do is figure life out.
And after Georgia Tech, I know you spent some time in the Navy and then went to Harvard Business School. What was that path like for you?
Well, I think one step led to the next, and I'd say they were all necessary steps. Because had I not gotten into the Navy, I don't think Harvard would have admitted me. So that's part of the lesson that I've learned over the years is that you got to take life one step at a time, and you got to plan those steps.
And how were your experiences there?
In where, the Navy?
Yeah.
It was great. I look back and I remember I met Penny on my way to Rhode Island. And she thought I was one of the least mature people she'd ever met, I think. She said, "Oh my God, I can't deal with this guy." And so some months later, I happened to be back in Washington, D.C., where we had met. And I said, "God, who was that beautiful girl that I met?" And that's back when you had your name in the phone book. And so I called her up and asked her for dinner that evening, and she accepted. I'm sure once she hung up, she said, "Oh my Lord, what am I doing here?" So I showed up in a suit, and she was just astonished, I think, that I had grown up. And we were inseparable for 47 years, or close to 50, basically, if you count the time we were dating. And I give credit to the Navy.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
That's really great. And after the Navy, after Harvard, you eventually transitioned to venture capital and private equity. And so what made you interested in moving towards that path?
I said, I think it's a business I could be good at. And as I look back, that was the right way of looking at my career decision, was what are you good at? And I thought I was good at those things: judging people, judging technologies, selling ideas, and eventually reaching success. But I didn't found Summit straight out of business school. I worked for another couple of firms and learned a little something about the business and about myself and about the way things work. So we started Summit in 1984, and what we thought was we had an idea of how to make a really good firm. Well, I might have had a little better insight than the next guy into what was going to work and what wouldn't work, but I'd say the real thing that I had and was able to bring to the party was pretty good judgment about people. And, is this person going to be able to make this company succeed? And that's a key question. And I'd say I was reasonably good at asking and answering that question. And then, we had to figure out how do you drive a hard bargain? How do you, but a fair bargain? How do you figure out how to convince this entrepreneur that you're better off with us on your team than without us? And to say to them, you might be better off with a teammate. It's a lonely business. Being an entrepreneur is a really lonely business, and what you probably need is somebody that you can call on Saturday night and say, I got a problem. Obviously, the successes are incredibly enjoyable. I mean, watching these entrepreneurs, I used to say, all we expect you to do is the impossible, because it is.
Yeah.
It's basically impossible to have an idea, create a company, convince people to join you, convince people to give you capital for your building of your company. It's basically impossible. Yeah, I agree, and I can tell you that our business has changed. There's a mantra now that's rather frequently spoken. I say our business. I've been out of it for a while, but people say, "Oh, so failure's great. You learn something from failure, and you can, rebound and do something else." I don't agree. I mean, I think failure is devastating. Failure can cause, obviously, financial distress. It can cause personal distress. People think that they could have done something, and then they look back and they say, I made these enormous mistakes. I didn't. So I've always thought the success breeds a lot more success than failure does. So again, you hear people in our business say, oh yeah, we want some guy that's failed because he learned something. I say, I want some guy that's succeeded because he really learned something. I used to tell young people joining my firm that a major difference between this firm and some others that you'll encounter is that everybody here wants you to succeed. There's not a skinny funnel that if I get through it, you might not.
Right.
It's more, if you succeed, we succeed.
Yeah.
And if you can find that kind of organization, I think that's where you can really learn. And then if you can really learn, that probably enhances your chance for really succeeding.
Yeah. I'd love to talk to you about sort of after you grew at Summit, your shift towards philanthropy and sort of how that happened and what triggered it.
Well, I freely confess that I didn't give much at all during the early phases of my career. And at some point in there, I had the resources to do that. I still didn't because I think I was so focused on my career in the firm and their success. And then I got more involved with my alma mater, Georgia Tech. The president would occasionally call me and say, I've got a kid I want you to meet. And it'd be a kid like you. I'd meet these great kids and I would support them and I'd get to know them. And of course, when he said, I got a kid I want you to meet, what he really meant was, I got a kid I want you to support here at Georgia Tech. And so I did that, met these great kids, and then one of them got a Rhodes Scholarship. And I said, wow. This is not only fun, this is interesting. And so we expanded the program. We went to Michigan. We hired a couple of the kids from Georgia Tech, a couple of my students there, and said, look, maybe there are other schools that we ought to think about working with. Let's call them. And so we worked on a list. Here's a list of schools that seem to be the kinds of schools we'd like to work with. Call them up. And so I had these 20-year-old kids calling college presidents. And I'm sure the college presidents thought the kids are, big wheels or something. And they were always shocked to learn that they were
just kidding.
Kids. And so occasionally one of these college presidents or whoever we'd end up with at the school. Occasionally they'd say, "That's great, let's do it." And we want to make sure we were all agreeing to do the same thing. And to me, the thing we were trying to do was was to was to help the schools attract to their campuses kids who might otherwise go elsewhere. The bargain that the school had to bring to the party was, first, they had to be willing to support it financially, but secondly, they had to say, okay, these kids are special, and I'm going to make sure that we justify their confidence in us. The University of Texas or the University of Michigan or Notre Dame or whomever, the kid could have gone to Harvard if he wanted to, or he could have gone to Stanford, wherever. But he's coming here, so I'm going to make sure we justify that confidence. And I hope your experience at Miami has been the same. But and that's the bargain, because we say, the kid could go anywhere. He's chosen to come to your school, so make it worth his while. We're in the merit business, so we're trying to take some special kids and help them get closer to their life's objectives. I interviewed a kid some years ago, and as the interview proceeded, I was just thrilled with it. He's a wonderful young man, and I said, so we're delighted to offer you the scholarship and hope that you'll accept it. He said, I'll accept it with great pride, and he said, but I want you to know that really this money doesn't go to me, because I'm a good student. I can get money to go to school somewhere. So maybe not here, but I can get to school. He said, but what this scholarship enables is for my younger brother, who's not a good student, it enables him to go to school. And I was blown away. I said, wow, the worldview, the wisdom that this young man has at 17 is just beyond remarkable. So everybody's got need. I was needy. I respect the fact that people need money to go to school. I don't think I can move the needle in the need business. There's just tons of need money. I can move the needle in the merit business. There's some great kids in the world. We just need to find it. And so that's part of what we did. We expanded over time to 10 schools, 20 schools, close to 40.
I know that you've mentioned that you like to stay connected with scholars and through letters and everything like that. And why is that so meaningful to you?
So I think seeing where this is all going is increasingly important to me and increasingly interesting to me. As I said, when we expanded, I went from thinking this was fun to thinking it was interesting. And I actually think it might be important now to help some people like you, help you get closer to your life's objectives. And if we can do in scale, which we're going to do, I mean, we're kind of at the 4,000 person level, which is just astonishing if you think about it. And we'll be at 5,000 soon enough, and maybe I'll live long enough to have us, get a lot higher than that. I hope so. But seeing it take shape is really fun. It's rewarding. I once had a kid write me, and she said, "Wow, you've helped me accomplish my goal of going to all 7 continents in a year." And I said, "Wow, aren't you supposed to be in school?" And she said, "I'm doing great, don't worry." And it's that kind of interaction that I find fun. I enjoy seeing where this is taking us. And I tell all the young people, let me see the world through your eyes. Because for a guy getting older, it's a lot of fun. It's an enormous reward for me to say, I've impacted these lives.
When I'm interviewing people and I ask, what's the biggest impact that this scholarship has had on you? Some of them go straight to, well, to be honest, I wouldn't have gone to college. I couldn't have afforded it. And then some people focus on the community that it brings, which I think is my opinion of why it's so important. And the network that you're able to build with the Stamps program, especially as it grows, I think is so unique and so valuable. And I think that it's something that not everyone really understands when they're even accepting the award.
I agree. And I remember once I had to speak to a group of young people at one of the schools, and I thought about why it worked so well, or it seemed to be working so well. And I said, clearly the money helps. But there are at least two other things, and I cite those two things as first the work that the schools do to justify your confidence. But then perhaps there's a third one, which is the work you do with each other. I find that so many of these cohorts become their own best friends. They meet when they start, they stay together throughout their experience, and they're hopefully friendly for the rest of their lives. And I find that the support that they offer each other, the wisdom of experiences that they can bring to each other, that formation of a team is very powerful. So back when you said, well, how's it different from what I would have thought? I mean, clearly that's different. I wouldn't have thought that would be the definitive reason for the success of the program. But I think it's those three things: money, the work the schools do, and the teams.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned it earlier that you're expecting it will grow in the coming years, but what do you envision it to become in the next 10, 20 years?
It's a tricky question. I think that the way we finance higher education in this country, the way our society pays for higher education is unsustainable. The costs are crazy. It's just not going to work for the long haul. And so my assumption is there'll be some big changes. I don't know what there'll be, but there'll be some big changes in the way education's financed. Recent administrations have tried to make debt completely forgivable, and I don't think that makes sense either. So something different has got to happen. The value proposition of going to school, in a funny way, no matter what you pay for it, it's got to change. That the schools have to justify the value. So ask the simple question: how do we change these lives? How do we take these people who probably were going to do a lot of great stuff? How do we help them do even more? How do we help them get closer to their life's objectives? I see these kids at 17 that for whatever reason they want to tackle some huge problem, whether it's a medical problem or a societal problem, and that'll change. They'll change their perspective over time, but I think it's great that some of these young people want to tackle some of these big issues, because some of them will, and some of them will indeed succeed. In my case, my message is I did okay, and I'm proud of it. I'm happy with the work we've done, and I hope we can continue doing it for the foreseeable future.
And lastly, I'd love to hear from you. What do you hope that students either participating in the scholarship now or in the future, or even myself, have to take away from your story?
From my story?
Yeah.
Well, I think the sky is the limit. And if you think about it, the idea that our kid could grow up in another town and do some pretty good stuff, I think it's a pretty good story. I'm sure that my story is duplicated and dwarfed by some people's accomplishments, but at least it's my story. So I hope people can say, get a good education, figure life out, make good decisions. That if you do all that, and maybe you need some good fortune as well. That if you do all that, you might be able to accomplish those goals that you have. Those goals would change; they would develop over time, but hopefully it'll accomplish some big goals. Because I think realistically, his book would suggest that the success of this program would suggest that the sky is the limit. You can affect a lot of lives. You can do a lot of things. You can uh, go a lot of places, learn a lot of things, meet a lot of people. Um, I think it's a good story, and I would hope that other people enjoy that level of life's enjoyment or more. You take some young people like you and say, you could be the leaders. You can make this a better place. You can make this world a little better. Maybe make the country a little better. You could almost certainly make your community a little better, and that'd be great there.
Yeah. More than 4,000 students, countless dreams made possible, and one extraordinary man at the center of it all. On behalf of all past, present, and future Stamps scholars, thank you, Mr. Stamps.